Okay, so we're live. I am here with Jaimie Beebe. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I cannot complain. How's the weather out there on the West Coast?
The last couple of days it's been a little bit chilly. It's been like, I don't know, like 70, but I guess it's warm if you're not out here, but but it's sunny at least. At least it's really sunny.
hmm Well, it's supposed to be spring here in Illinois, but it's been in the 40s all week. So, yeah, I would
Yeah,
take
I grew
70s
up
any
in the
day.
Midwest. I can't handle that stuff anymore.
Where'd you grow up at?
Iowa?
Iowa. Okay. I have been
Oh,
there multiple times. I'm in
oh yeah.
Illinois.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
so I guess I just want to hop right in. You are a casting director. What was sort of the career path that got you to that point?
Oh my gosh. I tried everything and failed until I got to casting and I was like, wait, I'm really good at this. No, I really just didn't know what I wanted to do. I think that I went to college. I have a master's degree, but I graduated from high school when I was 17 and I kind of traveled around for a little while. I followed a band called Fish because I'm like really old. Um and I think it's crazy like kids in high school they're like I know exactly what I want to do when I grow up and then they like do it. Cuz I just kind of wanted to do everything. So that's pretty much what I did. I got my bachelor's degree in photography and I got it the year I graduated, like digital photography came out. So I was like, I don't even know what to do with this.
Mhm.
Um, so then I traveled around for a little while more and I ended up actually in Chicago. And I got my master's degree there in music management because I was dating a guy who wanted to be in a band. So I was like, cool, like I'll just go get a master's degree and I'll manage your band and like whatever. Um, we ended up moving out to LA together. We're not together anymore, but he's a great guy. He's a chiropractor now. And he lives in Vegas randomly. But we're still great friends. He's married to a beautiful woman and has a child. But yeah, so we moved out to LA and like I was like, I don't want to manage bands. Like this is hard and I don't like it. And then I got into like I did like real estate for a while. I um and real estate was good. Like it was cool, but I didn't like it. Like people always calling me like 24 hours a day, like, can I see this house? I'm like, no, I'm busy. Like I just didn't like it. It wasn't for me. And then finally I jumped over into production and I was like, this is cool because it was exciting. It's like every day in production is different. But I was working like 20-hour days and like that was cool for like a little while, but not for very long for me. But I was managing a tiny production company, and part of the job was to do all the jobs, which is great because then I learned everything. But when I was doing casting for them, I was like, this is really cool. Like, the casting director is the best job because everybody likes you. Like, everyone's nice, everyone's like super friendly and like wants to talk to you and know how your day went. I'm like, this is a job for me. So so that's kind of how I got into casting when I left that company, I branched out and just did my own casting company.
hmm What what all because I'm curious. I mean, obviously being a casting director, you're obviously casting whatever production it is. But outside of that, what all goes into that sort of occupation?
It's a lot about relationships. It's a lot about who you know. I need to be able to call agents and managers and be like, "Hey, I have this project. Like, who do you have for me? Like, what do you have outside of the box? This is what I'm looking at. What do you have?" And, they need to answer my calls. So that's pretty important. So it's a lot about relationships, and I think just like being a people person, and just common sense, and that's really I think what it takes to be a casting director, to be honest.
Do you do a lot of have to hold a lot of auditions?
Before COVID, I did quite a few. I like to do self tapes at least to narrow things down if I don't know what I'm, exactly looking for. Because I don't want anyone to like waste their time and drive all across town and come see me. Although I like that, but yeah. And then now with COVID and stuff, we're really only doing self-tapes, which is kind of, it's different, I miss like seeing people,
Hmm.
um but it's nice. I can kind of, even if someone sends me a self-tape and they're not right for one part, I might file them away and put them in something else later.
Hmm. What overall, what sort of the communication like between like director, producer, casting director in terms of what you're kind of looking for what part?
Yeah, I mean, the director and producer, they give me the creatives. They give me like, they tell me what they want. I read this, like if it's a film or whatever, like I'll read the script and I'll have my own ideas. We talk a lot about what they're looking for, what they need, what they have in terms of like the rate and what type of production it is. So, that's going to fall into like the type of person that they can get. Um, and then I like to kind of cast a wide net, and I like to bring in something like outside of the box that they haven't thought of. Like for example, if we're casting a comedy film, maybe I would look and bring in somebody who's really well known for doing horror films, because maybe they want to do something different, and obviously they can act, they can do it, but they just haven't been seen in that role before. So sometimes that can really bring a film into light. Like, what is this person doing a comedy? Are they funny? And then people want to watch it.
Hmm. That and there are so many stories of that in Hollywood.
Yeah.
People who have jumped from one to the other. The thing that always cracks me up is the story I heard is when Bruce Willis did the first Die Hard movie. And prior to that, he was known as a comedic actor. So much so the trailer that was on TV for the first Die Hard movie never actually showed Bruce Willis's face, because they thought if people knew Bruce Willis was in it, they wouldn't go see it. Now we
Yeah.
only know him as an action star. Like he's the action guy. He's the guy they go to, and so something needs to blow up.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
think I like putting people in different situations. Like, a lot of character actors never make like the leading man role, which I think is just kind of bullshit. Like, I think it's
mhm,
super cool to put a character actor in the leading man role. Like, why does the leading man always have to be like this stereotypical like hot guy or whatever? Like, I would much rather see like someone dateable in the leading man role. Like, I mean, not that I'm not going to date Brad Pitt, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
mhm.
somebody that has something else, a little outside of the box. I think that casting is going more in that direction now. I think a lot of films are, which is cool.
Mhm. Okay. Have you ever dealt with any situations where somebody who just really, 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 really wanted a part and just wouldn't let you go about
Yeah, I mean that kind of
it?
happens. I've never had to like tell anyone to like stop contacting me or anything. Luckily. But yeah, it happens. But I think that most actors realize, I mean, you're gonna go to a million auditions, and be seen a million times before you even get one part. So
Mhm.
it's just part of what it is.
Right. Yeah, I have a friend of mine, Kelly Washington, who's been on the podcast before. She's been in a couple episodes of Parks and Rec and some stuff like that. And she was telling me that, yeah, gosh, just like you were saying with COVID right now, it's just driving her nuts, because it's basically you just sit at home until a call comes. Hey, here's the script. Go film yourself doing the lines. Go,
Yep.
I got to imagine that's a completely different world from what it was previously.
Yeah. I mean, we all had to kind of adapt and adjust, but um, I don't know if it's ever gonna fully go back to the way it was. I think, with technology, it's not necessary to always be in person.
Hmm.
So I think it's getting back to kind of how it was, but it'll never go back fully.
Yeah. We'll be telling our grandkids about the time before the pandemic.
Right. When we used to see each other in person, it was crazy.
Yeah, you could just walk up to somebody and hug them, and it was
Yeah.
okay.
Way back when.
Right. So, not too terribly long ago, you posted on your Instagram a project you had done casting for called the Civil Disobedience series.
Yeah.
What is that? I wanted to know more.
So it's kind of like a series. There's 6 of them, I think. And there's so much going on in the world right now, and they kind of cover like those topics, like racism, police brutality, things like that. And they cover it in a way I feel that's not negative, if that makes sense. Like, I mean, they don't make it a positive thing, but they give solutions rather than problems.
Mhm.
It like a lot of people when they make something, they'll show the problem, and they don't give actual solutions to, what we can do, like actual things that you can like take action and be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do today about this.
Hmm.
So I think this series is cool in the fact that they're out there, they're making something extremely relevant to today, and they're giving solutions. They're showing the problem, sure, but we all know what the problem is. We all know that there's problems. Like, we just need more solutions out there. So I think
Hmm.
that's kind of what they're doing with that. It's really cool.
That's really neat. Where's that? Where are we going to be able to watch that at?
I know that they just finished filming, and I don't know if it's been released on where we can watch it yet.
Okay, I'm going to keep an eye out for that because
Yeah,
that sounds
keep an
really
eye out for
interesting.
it, because I don't think they've released it yet. So
Hmm.
I better not say anything, any secrets. Can't let any industry secrets out.
Fair enough. Well, I have to get into the podcast that you do, Strictly Stalking, which was one of those that I was like, when you're scrolling through Instagram and somebody posts they're on a podcast, you're like, oh, okay, I'll check that out. And that one specifically is like one that I put on for the first time and then just like went down the rabbit hole. Like, just was listening to like episode after episode. And for me, it's kind of that weird conundrum of saying that you really, really enjoy something, but it's about something that's like dark and creepy and makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up.
Yeah.
But that is a fascinating podcast. What was the genesis of that?
Um, so I have a business partner who's also my co-host, Jake Deptula. Um, and we had met years ago. I was casting a film for him, which ironically enough, the film was about a nanny who was stalking the family that she was babysitting for. So, like, weird foreshadowing for life. But we hit it off. We got along really well. So we decided to have a production company, which is great. Anyone can have a production company. But we didn't know what to do necessarily with our production company. We had to start something somewhere. So I listened to a ton of podcasts. I love podcasts, especially true crime. And I called him one day, just kind of complaining, because that's like how our relationship is. And I was like, I want to do a podcast, but like, everyone's already doing one. All the good murders are taken. Like, my life sucks, like, whatever. And he's very logical. He's a very logical thinker. I'm kind of like fly off the handle, like if I see a pool, I'm just gonna jump in. Like, he's gonna like make sure there's water there. So he thinks for like a quick second, and he's like, well, you know no one's doing a podcast about stalkers. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about stalkers. What are you talking about? And then I was like, wait, like, I know all crime. I don't know anything about stalkers. Like, that's crazy, right?
Mhm.
And there's just not very much awareness about it. I had no idea how many people were being stalked, how horrific of a thing it is, like the PTSD, like, what the victims go through. It's crazy. And also, like, stalking is like slow murder for a lot of people,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And there's just nothing that anyone will do about it. Like, it's nuts how stalking is, what it is. So I started researching it, and how you said, you just kind of go down the rabbit hole, like, what the fuck. So
Mhm.
that's kind of how it started. And within like probably like the next week or so, we were ready, and we went over to our friends at Cast Media, and we were like, hey, do you want to do this with us? And like, kind of surprisingly, they were like, fuck yeah, let's do it. And I was like, oh shit, we have a podcast. I have no idea how to do that. But they helped us out a lot. They're awesome over at Cast Media, and that's how it started. And we just kind of took off from there.
It is, and I agree with you 100%. I didn't realize until I started listening to your podcast just like how crazy it is. And just like you were saying, like, you have some of these cases that have lasted like months, years,
Yeah.
sometimes over decades
Yep.
of people just I have the hardest time, I guess. Sometimes when you listen to true crime or you see, a story about a murder or something like that, you kind of like, oh, okay, I can see how that could happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Came home, spouse was cheating, bad day, got a gun. Oh, geez. Um, Stalking, on the other hand, especially to this level, like we're talking about on the podcast, I have like the most difficult time even getting my brain around it. Like,
Yeah.
what is going on in someone's head that they think that any of this is good or will have a good ending to it. um I my armchair diagnosis, there's a lot of toxic masculinity going on. I mean, that's pretty obvious. But the one that you did not too terribly long ago, I believe with Tracy Morgan,
Oh yeah.
where that guy had broken into her and her husband's house, got the VHS tape of their wedding, had it turned into a cassette tape, and was listening to it in his car while he was driving around. If
Yeah.
that isn't some of the creepiest thing you've ever heard of in your life,
I
you
mean,
know?
it's crazy. And some of the stories, like we have one coming up. I don't know if can I say what we have coming up? Maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
preview.
I'm like, oh no, I'm like releasing all the secrets here. We have one coming up where the stalker is actually an 80-year-old woman.
Whoa.
And it's explicit stalking. Let's say.
Whoa,
And I
no.
won't tell you who this woman is stalking, but like this episode, like I sat there with this look on my face, like, ho like, I wouldn't even know what to do if I was this person being stalked because, you have to, like, be nice to your elders and stuff, right? Like, it's so crazy to think about. I was just shocked. Like, the whole story, I was like, "Wait, what? What?"
God. Yeah, a lot of those from the woman's perspective, I'm thinking like in my head, I'm like listening to the podcast room, like get a baseball bat and beat the crap out of him. When it's an
Yeah.
80-year-old woman,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a bit different.
Or,
That's not.
we've had guys that are being stalked by women, and that's also like, it's so different and it's interesting because what do you do if you're a guy and, a girl comes up to you that's she's stalking you and you're in a public street and you're scared of her because she might have a knife to kill you. What are you going to do? Do you,
Right.
you can't defend yourself if she does do something because people are going to step in and be like, why are you hurting this girl? I mean,
Hmm.
it's crazy. Like, and also like the stalkers, it's such a mind fuck what they do too. So something that could be, you know, random, like if I misplaced a bunch of my underwear, let's say, I don't know, that would happen. This is going odd now, but if I like misplaced a bunch of my underwear, I'd be like, that's weird. I don't know where I put my underwear, right? But if you're being stalked and there's like 10 pairs of underwear missing, you know that your stalker was probably in your house and stole 10 pairs of underwear. Now, do you call the cops and be like, so I don't know who, what, why, where, when, but I have 10 pairs of underwear missing?
Hmm.
I mean, probably
Yeah.
not. Or like I had a full thing of wine in my fridge and now it's gone and I live by
Hmm.
myself. They'd be like, okay, lady. But that's the kind of shit that stalkers do.
Hmm. Well, and gosh, that being caught, and it seems like so many of the guests that you've had on the podcast were sort of caught within that thing where they don't want to be calling the police and bothering them over every petty little thing. But on the other hand, there's no doubt they're being fucked with. There's no doubt that somebody is toying with them and screwing with them. And yet, just like you said, what are you going to do? Call the police and be like, yeah, my underwear is missing. After a while,
Right.
they're going to be like, oh God, this crazy lady's calling again. Oh my God.
Yeah. And then, but once you put it all together, once you string it together and look at it as a whole, you're like, oh shit, this is all happening.
Hmm.
But, it's hard to get our law enforcement to do that, because they are very busy. There's not most law enforcement, most areas don't have law enforcement just for stalking. I mean, we do in Los Angeles, we have the threat assessment unit, but it's hard for them to recognize what's going on sometimes because we don't have the proper training for law enforcement of what stalking really is because it just hasn't really been talked about. There's not a lot of awareness of it yet.
Hmm.
So that's
Well,
kind of what we're trying to do.
and it feels like a lot of police departments, like it feels like when this is first brought to them, this might be the first time they've encountered this kind of incident. So, and and this is the thing that frustrates me, and I really wish I had an answer for it. In that, I understand that we live in a society where we would rather let 10 criminals go free than one innocent person go to jail. Like, I understand the mentality behind that. And I understand that everybody should have their rights, but it seems like that also ends up sort of the weapon that so many of these stalkers use to get around the law to continue to do what it is they're doing.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, there's so many different ways to stalk right now, um, like with technology. And so, I mean, we haven't even caught up with some of the things that stalkers are doing. I mean,
Mhm.
online and even just with tiny cameras and like all the things that stalkers can do these days. I mean, we need people constantly in training to understand and, and find these stalkers. And sometimes people don't even know who's stalking them.
Hmm.
How do you work that?
Right.
How do you bring that person to justice if you can't even find them?
Hmm. Well, there's definitely a mental health aspect to it. Some of the podcasts I would listen to of yours, I would get so frustrated because like this had been going on for years. He finally got arrested, tried, convicted, and went to jail for 4 months.
Right.
Okay,
With no mental health at all.
yeah, that 4 months isn't going to rehab anything. All he's doing the entire time is counting the days till he can get out and start doing it again.
Yeah, I mean, stalkers are obsessed on their person. They're not gonna just stop one day. They're not gonna wake up and be like, "All right, I'm done." They stop when when they get help, which is very, very rare, when they're in jail or when one of them dies.
Hmm.
That's when a stalker stops. Normally, I mean, there's always exceptions, and we've had exceptions. On our podcast, we had one girl who just she called his mom and that ended the stalking, as far as she knows for now. I mean, who knows? It could come back. But, it's interesting because it's hard to say what, how to get them to stop because there are ways, but a lot of it does come down to mental health.
Hmm. Has there been a lot of research done into sort of the mental, I guess, profile or makeup of a person who is a stalker and what gets them to start doing that to begin with?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because there's so many different reasons that people stalk.
Hmm.
Like there's the erotomania stalkers. They're interested in celebrities. They build this life in their heads, with these celebrities. You see it on the news, like, oh, I thought I was married to one of the Kardashians, we have kids together, and they
Oh,
don't, obviously. And there's relationship stalkers, the people who just can't let go of a relationship and they stalk their former partner. The stranger stalking, which is like the most terrifying to me because you could be in line at a bank and someone could be standing behind me and be like, oh, I just love her hair. And it builds from there and they start stalking. They follow me home. Like, who knows?
hmm.
But a lot of it is, there's some schizophrenia or, some type of mental issue for sure. But it's
Hmm.
different in a lot of cases too.
Because I always thought it was interesting um, what the trigger is. You know what I mean? Like you can have somebody who, they go to the bank every day, they go to the grocery store every day, they encounter members of the opposite sex or even same sex. Um, and yet for some reason, one time they see one person and it just like sets off this cascade of behavior that is so bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. There's not really a across the board thing that we can say like, oh, well, this triggers stalking because we don't know. It could be
Hmm.
anything,
Yeah.
and sometimes there are like, if you're in a relationship with somebody that, there are kind of red flags that you can go back and look at and be like, oh, they were kind of doing this during our relationship. But how do you know? You don't know until it's there. It's really,
Hmm.
it sucks, but there's no way to like foresee it coming.
Hmm. We're all, as humans, we're really good at ignoring red flags. We're really, really great at that. We're great at justifying,
Wait,
like,
are we talking about my dating life
no,
now?
we're talking about both of ours, I think.
Oh
The way you
boy.
kind of justify it yourself, like, oh yeah, that was kind of weird, but they probably just had a bad day or something. Then one day you turn around, and you go, holy shit, this person's crazy. That makes a
Yeah.
lot more sense.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like my last relationship. Uh-oh.
Too many of us have been there in varying degrees for sure. Um, wow, yeah. So do you have to at all actively go look for the people who are going to be the guests on your podcast, or a lot of these people come forward to you?
When we were in beginning, we went and looked for people. We found there's a lot of, it's funny, like a lot of survivors of stalking turn into advocates because it's so hard to get help. They had to be their own advocate. They see that and then they turn around and they start helping other people. So the first people that we had on our podcast were like stalking advocates, like Lenora Claire, Kathleen Gallagher, um, And they helped us find, because they're out there helping, they're boots on the ground, like helping people get away from their stalkers. So they helped us find, other people. And now it's a lot of word of mouth. We have a lot of listeners, and they'll pass our information along to, like, oh, my friend is being stalked, or I'm being stalked, or whatever. So, and they reach out a lot more now. But yeah, in the beginning it was kind of hard to find people that would talk about it.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's a very victim shaming crime for some reason. Like, obviously, if you're like, I mean, it's never the victim's fault, but it's just so weird, especially like with stranger stalking. Somebody you don't even know is like stalking you. It's in no way your fault. Like,
Hmm.
how could that ever be your fault? And it's so weird. So that's why it hasn't been talked about as much as it should be, I think.
Right. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, don't want to admit that it's a problem. They don't want to admit that they're having a problem. They don't want to, and it was interesting, to varying degrees, different guests you've had on your podcast, to how much they were open to friends and family about what was happening. So many of them didn't want others to know because they didn't want them to worry.
Hmm.
And I can definitely understand that sort of headspace.
Yeah, and it's also like, I think it's hard to wrap your head around too. Like, you're like, well, maybe it'll just stop if I ignore it, or like, why, like, how it happens is just, it's so unique, it's so weird, I think, inside your brain as a victim, that how do you even begin to tell people,
Hmm.
you know
Yeah.
but you
That,
should. It's definitely important to tell everybody, and make people aware, because that way, if you are sitting at a restaurant and your stalker comes in, everyone you're with knows that's your stalker, and there's going to be immediate help. There's going to be, witnesses, and things like that. And so many times people think like, oh my God, am I just going crazy? Like, why would this person be stalking me? I must be going crazy. And that's not the case. Write everything down, and you'll see, like, 8 times today I saw this person at 8 different places, and I think they're stalking me. Okay, now I
mhm.
have it written down, and this is really what's happening. So it's
Yeah.
it's always good to keep as many records as possible about everything.
Well, and stalking is that's not something you explain quickly.
Yeah.
If you've had a stalker for a long time and you haven't told anybody, and then you're sitting at dinner with friends and he walks by, you can't, okay, everybody listen, lean in. I have to tell you about the last 6 months, you know?
Right.
And on the other hand, people have different, maybe understandings as to what the term stalker means. Like, oh, he's just some guy who's in your spin class who thinks he's cute and he thinks he's, you catch him
Right.
staring at you all the time.
Or
Like,
people be, oh, this I'm stalking this person I think is hot. I'm stalking him on Insta. Like, using those words, like, kind of hurts the actual stalking
yeah,
survivors, because it romanticizes it. Movies, TV shows romanticize it. It when John Cusack is outside your house holding up the music, the boombox, like, that's the best part of the movie. Like, I've always loved that. It's so hot. Like, I want John Cusack outside my house. But if you really look at it, it's kind of like, it's borderline, it's stalking. Like, it's
right.
it's not appropriate. And then people um do see that, and they're like, I could go do that, and but no, you really shouldn't do that.
Right, yeah. You're taking a risk because if it's
Yeah.
reciprocated, then you're the most romantic person in the world. If it's not, you end up on the
Right.
strictly talking stalking podcast.
I mean, I think if you're not John Cusack, it just don't do it.
I'll keep that in mind. If I ever get the inclination to do it, I'll just check mark. Nope, not John Cusack. Can't do it. Can't do it. As a kid, I always felt that way about Santa Claus.
Yeah.
I'm like, how is there this big fat white man with a beard who somehow knows when I'm naughty or nice?
Right? It's
That's creepy in and of
creepy.
itself. Yeah. Um, that is crazy. And I think one of the things that occurred to me over the course of listening to your podcast is, in a way, what a really, really great almost service it's become to that community. Because giving people an outlet to come forward and feel validated and get to tell their story. Like for me, up until a week ago, I had no idea like how I would even really define it. Like, oh, it's some ex who won't leave your ass alone, But then you listen to podcasts and you're like, oh my God, these people are out of their fucking mind. They are just
Yeah.
insane. But the Diane Neal one, I think, was just like, oh my God, that was so heartbreaking.
Yeah, that broke my heart for her. And it's
Hmm.
crazy because, she's well known. Obviously, she's on TV and everything. And to realize that she was going through all that and still, like, waking up every morning. Like, I don't think I could have done that, like
Mhm.
my dog gets sick and I'm like, oh, I can't work for 3 days, like, and she was dealing with such a horrendous thing happening to her,
Mhm.
and she did have to go into hiding for a while, and she's only really opening up and talking about it now because I think she got to the point where she's like, fuck it, I can't live like this.
Mhm.
At least if something happens, everyone will know.
Right. Well,
And it's
that's
sad that it has to be like that. It's really fucking
yeah.
sad.
I mean, that's the thing that drives me, I think, the most insane about it is you get one life on this planet that is X amount of years. That's like all you get. And when you check out, it's over. And to have so much of the years that you do have on this earth consumed by something like that, especially when you get to the point where you feel helpless and feel powerless because you feel like the police aren't able to help you, the district attorney, especially in her case, where it was like it just almost felt like, you know, the law enforcement was just either powerless or clueless as to how to do anything
Or
about it
I think
whatsoever.
she felt like they were against her at some points,
Mhm.
and it sure looked like that.
Mhm.
It did. Oh, this crazy broad. It's sad, but that happens a lot. Like, women are, accused of being overly emotional, or, whatever it is, and written off because they were just being emotional or something, which is
Mhm.
insane.
Well, I'm hoping we can turn the corner on that. I'm hoping we can get to a point where when somebody, whether it's a woman or a man or whatever, says, I have a problem, we listen and don't take into account things like race, sex, income, those kind of things, and just say if this person has a problem, this person says they have a problem, and we need to get down to it. I mean, what's otherwise? What's the point of saying protect and serve all the time if we can't? And I realize we have a lot of antiquated laws when it comes to that.
Yeah.
That's like the most frustrating thing is it seemed like there were even times where they didn't even know exactly like, do we have like a stalking charge that we can even convict
Yeah,
them
it's only
on?
recently that stalking is even a crime in the way that it is,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still not everywhere. I
Yeah.
mean, bigger cities, yeah. New York is definitely not as good as LA, in stalking laws. Um, yeah, I mean, it's tough. And like, women of color have the hardest time with it.
Mm-hmm.
Cops just don't believe that, they're just not trained in a way, like, and especially like with technology and stuff. Technology is ever changing, and the laws don't change as quickly as technology. So,
Mm-hmm.
is it illegal to stalk someone online? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but where are the laws?
Yeah.
We have to find the right law. It's hard, and
Mm-hmm.
it's hard for the cops because they don't have that kind of training.
Well, especially when it's across state lines. You're like, okay, so you live in California and somebody in Wisconsin won't leave you alone. Okay, so they keep making different ghost profiles and following you. Okay, what do you want us to do about that exactly? You
Right.
know, there was the one guest you had on who did a lot of the Instagram, did a lot of the makeup tutorials. I had this
Oh
guy
yeah.
who was just like exposing himself and sending her messages constantly. And like she even said she got to a point where her business revolved around her checking her email, but she got to the point where she was getting like PTSD from checking her email
Yeah.
because she knew like every day this guy would pop in there with some other kind of sick message or something like that from yet another email address he made.
Yeah, and I think she got only got help because she went and got a private investigator.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and that happens a lot. Private investigators, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, they do a lot more than the police do most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, because they can put all their resources into one thing,
True.
and
That's true. I
that's
mean, they're a hired hand, so un, and that's what's unfortunate, because if you don't have that money, then and the cops aren't helping you, and
right.
I mean,
The
I'd like to say like that's where like the podcast kind of comes in, but
mm-hmm.
we're trying. We're trying. We're definitely trying to change the laws and make it something that everybody can get help from.
Mm-hmm. 100%. So we've covered doing casting director. We've covered the podcast. Outside of those, what are your hobbies? What else are you into?
Oh boy. Well, I like long walks on the beach. No, I am kind of just living my best life. I think that life is short. I used to not be this happy. Uh, no, in the last like year and a half or so, I really kind of came into my own and started thriving. And I've been single, which is amazing and so happy for me after the last one.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but I'm so happy that I was able to be like single through quarantine and COVID because
Hmm.
otherwise, like I might not be here. But uh, you know, I hang out with my friends, I travel a bunch. That's about it. Like I'm a pretty open book, really. If you look at my Instagram, I've got 2 dogs and a cat. I do everything on Instagram that I tell people not to. Uh,
Which is,
you should never tag your location. You should always
oh,
be really careful what you post and that kind of stuff. And so I don't listen to myself. No, I'm actually really careful about taking locations and stuff. I'll do it when I'm not somewhere,
hmm.
But
I've heard that. I've heard a lot of people do. I'll even do that here in the Midwest. If we go on vacation somewhere, I won't post those pictures till after I get back. Not necessarily
yeah,
from a stalking standpoint, but I don't need people to know that my house is just vacant for 4 days, and
yeah,
yeah, anybody can just hop over there and take all my not important stuff. Um, well, that's really really cool. I think it's important for everybody to find that balance and find that really great place. I'm on the opposite end. I'm married, 3 kids, couldn't be happier.
well, I mean, no,
But
that's good
yeah,
too.
everybody has their own. You got, and I think similar to you, I think over like 10 years ago now, I got out of a really 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 bad relationship and went through that thing where it's like, you know what, this is just great. I never thought I'd get out of it, and now,
Yeah.
oh, you can breathe and feel the sunshine again, and yeah, and from there it just feels like all things are possible.
Yeah, I mean I totally agree with that. I mean, I was in like a pretty horrible relationship and luckily I got out and I got out safely, which is awesome. And literally like since that day I've just kind of been like, you know what? Like I'm fucking happy. Like the sun is shining. I've got my dogs and my cat. Like, I own a house. Like nothing's really that bad anymore. So yeah, it's just kind of been awesome. I've got some great friends I hang out with constantly and probably too much. They're probably bored of sick of me.
Eh,
I
eh.
think they might have gotten a little sick of me during, quarantine when it was just like me and my 2 friends. But luckily they're still hanging out with me.
I was gonna say, based on Instagram, it seems like that small group of you is together like all the time.
Pretty much every day. Well, we're all like neighbors too. So
Oh,
it was
okay.
really easy during like COVID and quarantine. Like I'm just gonna walk a couple houses down and hang out with my friends. And I put a full bar in at my house, so then they came over more.
Oh,
Yeah,
well, gosh, maybe that's what I should have done. Just put a bar in the backyard.
I know,
Oh,
right?
then I'd never get my
That's what
friends
I
to leave.
did. That's what I did. And now that quarantine's over, I'm like, hey guys, I'm gonna put a hot tub in. Like I'm just gonna install a hot tub. Do you guys think you'll like that? So
Yeah,
they'll still keep coming over.
it'll keep the party rolling. Why not? But that
Yeah.
is a. It's always interesting to me. I think when you take a step back and you look at it, how being in one of those kind of situations, for some reason, like not being in close proximity every day to one specific person, ends up this like turning point in your life. Like all of a sudden after that, everything's different, and you can
Yeah.
look back on it and be like, "Oh my gosh, why did I waste so much time?" But it's the red flags thing we were talking about, you know.
It totally is. It totally is. And it's really interesting now, especially like listening to people on the podcast because sometimes, because we also deal with a lot of domestic violence and things like that on the podcast. And sometimes I'm listening and I'm like, I know what you're saying, like, and I can see it from hindsight. It's always 2020. You're like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, when this person told me this, I should have really thought about that and like not hung out with that person anymore, like
Hmm.
people aren't fixable in that way sometimes. Like
Right.
I'm a very, I meet someone I'm like, oh, you need help. Like, let me help you. Like, let me fix you.
Hmm.
And luckily I don't like do that anymore with my relationship. Um, but yeah, it's really interesting, you know, hearing everybody else and like being able to see the red, like, 'cause you can always see someone else's red flags.
Hmm.
Always, always.
Always.
And so it's something that, I've grown a lot listening to other people's stories, which is kind of great.
Hmm. It's absolutely right. It's funny because, even looking back on it, there were definitely red flags very, very, very early on. And I sit back and I think if I had a friend who had just started dating someone and told me they had done or said this, I would have looked at him and been like, um,
Yeah.
dude, what are you doing? Like, this is the time you need to be hightailing it. But when you're in that situation, you just, for whatever reason, I wish I could understand the psychology behind that, but it's bizarre.
Yeah. No, it's weird. And I was chatting with somebody. I'm on all the dating apps, of course. Um I was chatting with somebody on the dating app the other day, and I guess maybe we had matched before and I never like responded or something. We matched again, and he was so angry at me. Like I could tell what like he was like, "Well, can you just not hold a conversation?" I was like, I mean, we're just texting like hello right now. Like I can. I mean,
Hmm.
actually a podcast, I can talk all fucking day. And it was really interesting like how our conversation progressed, and he just got more and more angry. And I don't even know this person. I've never met them. I swiped right. That was it. And so, I deleted and like blocked them from the app. But I just felt so proud of myself. I was like, I just saw the red flags because he was really cute. Normally I would have been like, oh well, maybe he's just having a bad day. But
Hmm.
it's not like that anymore. I'm like, okay, bye.
Yeah. Well, how do you possibly think that a relationship's going to start good like that? Like, I'm going to chastise you for not talking to me?
It's so weird. That actually happens like a lot. If
Really?
I, especially like on Instagram and stuff, sometimes people will message me if I don't follow them. I usually don't read the messages, like the other messages or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I don't always read the like usually I don't. And every once in a while I'll go through and kind of look and see because sometimes it's like people have been stalked or reaching out or whatever. But I'll get messages from guys and they're like, "Hey, I want to get to know you," or like, "Hey, I want to take you out. I want to do this. I want to do this." It's always, "I want to do this. I want to do that." On and on and on. And they'll have like a full like circle conversation where they're like, "Fine, I guess you're not going to respond. Like, fuck you then." And I'm like, "Holy shit. Like, you've just sent 50 messages in within a month, over and over. And now like you got from I want to see you to fuck you? Like, it's
Right.
so crazy. And it happens a lot, a
Hmm.
lot.
I can imagine. Well, especially, I don't think a lot of people don't realize that on Instagram that there's two different inboxes. There's
Yeah.
like the inbox for your friends, and then the inbox for just people who send you messages that you're not following.
Yeah,
Because
but
I've
also, like, I think people should have a right to not respond.
right,
Like,
yeah,
if I don't know you, even if I do know you, I don't have to respond.
right, yeah. I got my best friend. Sometimes I take a week to respond to. Sorry, I
Yeah.
just like life's busy. By the way, thanks for responding to me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
That's one of the things that I've found. It's so interesting that trying to being a smaller podcast and starting and trying to build and grow is that trying to get people to come on the podcast has proven to be one of the most difficult things because you're trying to break through that filter and you understand why that filter's there. It's there for a reason. And I
Yeah.
completely respect it. So I literally, you go to my inbox on Instagram and I've got like 15 messages to different people that all show up as unread. And I will
Yeah.
never send another one because if that's just not the box they go to, then what's the point of being like, okay, fine, you're not going to respond to me then? What do you think they're going to come back and be like, oh shit, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, I'll be on your podcast. Like, you know,
Yeah. No,
it
it's so weird how like men get extremely angry
mhm,
like if you don't respond. It's like
right.
I don't think I would do that. I don't think I would keep texting and be like, fine, fuck you if you don't want to go out with me. Like Jesus. Like it's so aggressive.
Like, okay, mama's boy, I'm sorry you didn't get your way. Jesus.
I mean, it's kind of scary though to think about how
Hmm.
many times I get that a lot. Like men that start getting angry because I haven't responded or because I say no. I've had that
Right.
happen too, where, like talking on a dating app and they say something that I'm like, I'm not really like into this person that much. Like we don't have the same values or whatever. I'll be like, hey, like I think you're super cool. I don't think it's gonna work out. I don't see this long term. And they get angry.
Hmm.
And like all I said was no. And like I didn't even have to explain what no meant.
Yeah.
And they get angry. So I think that that has ties back into stalking a little bit too, is sometimes when people say no, no one cares, you know?
Mhm.
It's just kind of our society is a little fucked up like that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of yeah, I get it 100% because like I understand if I'm, and I've been there before, my dating life was pretty much over by the time we got to texting. Mine was still the pass the note in class kind of days. That was our version of texting. And yeah, I think we've all been there where you kind of really had a big crush on somebody and you're trying really, really hard to make something happen. And eventually they're just like, yeah, just no, and then yeah, you feel kind of heartbroken and maybe a little bit frustrated, but then you move on with your day. I
Yeah.
don't, the whole, like I said, chastising and being mean and rude and disrespectful just because you didn't get your way is just, it's immature for sure.
It's so weird that like I mean, because I haven't been single in a really long time.
Hmm.
Um and and I just recently was like, I'll start dating again. It's been over a year and wow, it's just tough out there. Like, I mean, I'm a little harsh too. Like if it like I'm not, looking to waste my time with anyone that,
Hmm.
is gonna whatever, treat me with any kind of disrespect. And there's a lot of that out there too. I'm like, do people not have manners anymore? It's
Right.
crazy.
Yeah. And they want you to cave your standards to them. And it's always the
Yeah.
either I'm Mr. Cool and I'm mad if you don't talk to me, or I'm pathetic, feel sorry for me, talk to me. You
Yes.
know,
And
that's
neither
kind
of
of
those work with me. No way. Neither of those. I have such a unique taste anyway, I think so.
hmm. Like Brad Pitt.
No,
No.
surprisingly no. I like really tattooed guys, like lots of tattoos.
Uh,
Like if you have tattoos on your face, like that's cool too.
oh, really?
Yeah, like it's a whole thing. I don't have a single tattoo,
Oh, okay.
but I
Not
love
a.
tattoos. Like I love, love, love tattoos. I just think they look so cool. And so I like those types of guys that are like really nerdy and smart and like super successful. So
Hmm.
that those things don't really normally go together. Like a
Right.
lot of those
Yeah.
fake tattoo guys are like, heroin's cool.
You want to come do meth in my trailer?
Yeah, so there's a little bit like, I have to weed them out a little, but
Hmm.
yeah, I have an odd taste, so
Hmm.
I
Well,
think I'm gonna
I'll.
look like a bad boy and then be like a total nerd.
Yeah. That's always kind of the dynamic, isn't it though? Because the amount of people I'd have who were friends who would begin dating a guy because he was the quote unquote bad boy. And
Yeah.
then lo and behold, a couple months later, they find out he is in fact a bad boy. Like,
Right, right. I
yeah.
did that for years. So I'm
Hmm.
trying to not do that now. Like, okay, wait, like I had to get to know people first.
Hmm.
But yeah, you know, I mean, just somebody I get along with, but
Hmm.
looks like it's hard dating during COVID because you can really only swipe right or left. So you're just really swiping on how they look.
Hmm.
You don't know anything about them. It's so weird.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
most of them, by the time I chat with them for like 2 seconds, I'm kind of like, okay, bye.
Okay, bye. And they're like, okay, fuck you too.
I know. I'm just like not making a name for myself in the dating world here.
Yeah, I'm just there aren't a lot of gentlemen out there anymore, unfortunately. Damn few of us left. Um well, okay, well, hey, I'll stop taking up your time. Anything you want to say on the way out the door?
Gosh. No. I mean, anybody that, has any questions or wants to find me, my Instagram is feathergirl77. My podcast is Strictly Stalking, and that Instagram is Strictly Stalking Pod. And that's it.
And I can absolutely guarantee you I will keep following and I will definitely keep listening because it's absolutely fascinating.
Thank you.
Mm.
Thanks
All
so
right.
much.
Well, once again, Jaimie, thank you so much for taking time of your day to come on the podcast. And yeah, hopefully we'll talk to you again in the future.
You will. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you.